I'm Elliot. I work as digital enabler for Yorkshire North and East Methodist District, and this video is a social media masterclass from me, particularly exploring what does it look like to be Methodists online. I've produced various guidance and resources over the years that I've been in my role around social media and how churches can engage on social media, but quite a lot of it needed updating. Social media moves at such a fast pace that quite a lot of it is out of date. And particularly over the last couple of years, even the basic principles have evolved quite a lot. And so this video is an amalgamation of all of that. It's an updated version of my guidance all in one place. It's a masterclass covering beginner to expert of all the things you need to know, and it covers the kind of current trends and what I would recommend we do going forward. So I hope it's accessible to everyone who's watching this. I'm going to try and keep it as concise as possible, so we're not going to dig too deep into it. But I'm going to split it up into various chunks, which hopefully you can watch individually or watch this as a whole video, however you choose. I'm going to particularly focus on Instagram, as that's where I've been experimenting and have most expertise in. But the principles that we'll go through kind of can be applied to any social media platform. So let's dive in. I think it's always helpful with social media to start with what are you trying to achieve? And as a result of that question, it will often inform what content you want to make, but also which platform you want to be in. And that's often the first question I get asked from churches is which social media platform should we be on? But before I dive into looking at which different platform might be appropriate for you, I think there's a step before that we need to address, and that is how we actually engage in those different spaces. You might be taken for granted that you want a church presence on one of these social media platforms, and you're trying to choose which one to go for. And actually, some of my thinking over the past few years has moved away from that direction. I think a lot of our understanding of engaging on social media has changed. And so I mentioned this in, I think, last year's social media trends video, but actually it's far more effective these days to engage online as individuals rather than as a corporate church body. And so when you're thinking about what you want to achieve and which platform you want to be on, ultimately, I think it comes down to you as an individual, you watching this, whoever you are, whether you're a minister, a volunteer, a church admin, if you are in charge or are wanting to promote your church online, then go to the platform that you are most comfortable with, that you engage with normally in your everyday life. And don't set up a new church account, but share things from your personal account and share things as you. We are, as Methodists, a movement of local people, and that's how I see a lot of our social media being most effective, as local people, a big network sharing things individually rather than a top-down church structure approach, which often comes across very corporate and falls on deaf ears. That being said, often we still need a church account or we still want a church account. And so some of my tips will cover what we do and post on those accounts. But I would encourage you to really seriously consider whether it is necessary for your church to have an account or whether you can achieve the same result by just going on the social media platform of your choice and posting as you yourself. So predominantly in terms of social media platforms, there is a limited choice. For the majority of people watching this, if you're in a church setting, it's likely that Facebook is going to be the place that you're going to want to have a presence on, because that's where you're most comfortable, it's where your age group and where the community are most comfortable. Possibly Instagram is another place where you'd want to be if you're someone managing the church account who's slightly younger and more at home on Instagram, then that's perfect. Other platforms are unlikely to be suitable unless you are of the right age group. Then I suggest TikTok is not going to be you're not going to be most effective there, because you need to understand the culture, and most of us aren't in the right age bracket to do that effectively. I think we should have a church presence there. If you've got young people who are willing to do it, amazing, go for it. But if not, don't try and do something that feels unnatural. There's some basic things we need, like a profile picture, which applies across all the social media platforms. And again, my thinking on this has changed over the years. Previously, I would have highly recommended to you to have your church logo as the profile picture. And that's still fairly good advice. But once again, I'm trying to find ways that we can come across as less corporate and embody our Methodist roots, come across as a movement of local Methodist people. And so for my social media account, I've gone from using a logo to using a picture of me because it's more personal. And in the same way, I think there's ways that we can shift. I would really encourage you not to have a picture of your church building, because as churches, we are not the building, we are the people. So always try to use pictures of people. And remember that the logo is fairly small, so it needs to be really bold and recognizable in a small scale. The other bit of setup we need is we need to write some text in our bio, the description on our Facebook page or our Instagram account. And that's a really great place to provide key information. You've only got a set number of characters. You've not got much text to really express what's going on at your church. I would encourage you not to put statements that every church puts and makes us look all exactly the same, such as all are welcome. Might be nice in what we're trying to communicate, but we can show that rather than telling that. Thinking about trying to not be too corporate, but also the fact that a lot of content on social media is now video based. Branding has become a lot more subtle in a way. You don't need to stick your church logo on every piece of content you put online. With a lot of video, there's little clever ways that you can hint at some of the colors that are part of your brand without explicitly saying it. But it's more about making sure that what you're putting out is recognizable if people see it out of context, that they know there's a consistency to it, that they go, that's such and such Methodist church, or that's been shared by someone and it's to do with the Methodist church. So maybe you want to set a goal on social media and think about what is your aim. And that shouldn't be just to invite people to church. That is not the purpose of social media. You can do some publicity now and again, but the majority of the time, social media is there to be interactive, to build community, to reach new people and engage with them in interesting ways. It's not a notice board for your church. The best way to get that engagement is to have content that speaks directly and is relevant directly to your target audience. And so you need to decide who you're talking to. The misconception is that on social media, we can reach everyone. And we have a huge opportunity to reach more people than we usually would in traditional ways. But we're not going to reach everyone. And so we really need to be specific. Content that is targeted towards a very specific niche or very specific target audience do far better than trying to be all things to everyone. Some of that's going to come down to who you, as the person looking after that account, whether it's your personal or church account, what you're passionate about, but also the things that are of value to the church. So maybe your church is exploring an eco journey. Maybe you're on a path towards net zero. And so you're predominantly going to use your social media to tell that journey. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's about support for lonely, older, vulnerable people through lunch clubs and coffee mornings. And maybe that's your focus. Maybe that's what your church's focus is in the community. And maybe you could really focus on doing that well on social media. Maybe it's about young people. Maybe you have lots of families and you're doing lots of youth work. So maybe your account is about connecting with parents or connecting with people who might come to Messy Church. And so your content is going to focus on things that reach those people. So once you've decided on who it is that you're trying to reach, then you need to create some content that's going to reach them. And we'll get more into this in a minute about what we should do, but let's talk about the range of options available to us. Again, previously over the years, the main thing that's been on social media is images and graphics and photos. And I've produced resources to help churches with that, providing templates of graphics and images and photos. And you can still use them in some places, particularly Facebook. It might still be effective. Things have moved really fast over the last few years. And now the predominant format on all social media platforms is video, particularly vertical video. And I've steered away previously from encouraging churches to engage in TikTok style videos because I think it's beyond where a lot of us are, but we have no choice anymore. We have to engage because effectively all social media platforms have become TikTok. What you think of as TikTok is now all social media. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube all prioritize vertical video. And the content that I post on social media, vertical video outperforms everything else, hands down. If you post a single graphic on social media, the likelihood of your followers seeing that content is very little. The likelihood of new people outside your church seeing that content is practically zero. And so if I was to encourage you to focus on anything, I mean, ideally we do everything, but we know that's not possible. We have limited time and resources. If I'm going to encourage you to focus on one thing, it would be vertical video. On Facebook, there are a few more options because you can post text and links just by themselves. I'd really encourage you not to do that at all because, again, they're not going to reach anybody. Vertical video is the way you're going to reach people. Well, again, there are a few things that have changed over recent years. One of those things is hashtags, and they no longer work the way they used to work. So they used to be a really good way of getting our content seen by people outside the church because you could connect in with various different topics using the hashtag. That's not how they work any longer because you can't search and filter by latest posts on hashtags. They are there just to predominantly guide the algorithm. We are really at the algorithm's mercy in terms of who sees our content. And there's a few things to bear in mind with the algorithm that affects the type of content we might want to create. So you've got to be aware that when you post something, it's not necessarily going to be shown to all your followers. The algorithm will match what you've posted with people who it thinks are interested in what you've posted. And they could be people that are following you, and could be people who aren't following you. And so you've got to be aware of that. So internal messaging is really not a great thing to post on social media because anybody could be seeing it. If you're posting your church notices, then people outside the church that get shown that are going to think that's very odd. I'm not part of that church. Why would I want to see that? So that's not a very useful thing to post. Equally, you've got to be aware that the algorithm shows things not in chronological order. And so when I'm scrolling through Instagram or Facebook, I often see posts from days or weeks ago because stuff just pops up as it thinks I might be interested in it. And it doesn't matter when it was posted. So you've also got to think about when you're posting on social media, if you're saying, come to church this Sunday, people might not see that until a week later. And so that post is no longer relevant to them. And so the content we need to post needs to be relevant at all times. If people see it today, tomorrow, in a week's time, it still needs to be relevant to them and communicate good information. The main way these days that we can be successful and effective on social media is to focus on producing really high quality content. Don't worry about posting on a regular schedule. Don't worry about posting so much per week every day. If your church is insistent that they want things put out on social media, push back against that because that doesn't need to happen. If you're constantly trying to get people off of social media into your local church, you're not going to be very successful because that's not what the social media companies want you to be doing. They want you to be promoting conversation and engagement. What does need to happen is you need to sit down and try and craft some really relevant content that's going to speak to the people that you want to connect with on social media. Focus on sharing the stories of what's happening in your church. Focus on sharing what's going on behind closed doors. Focus on behind the scenes, introducing people, sharing your faith, doing bite-sized little bits and pieces that engage with your audience. So take an example, if you're a church on a net zero journey, how can you create some little vertical videos just filmed on your phone that share some of that story? Could it be a congregation member talking to camera? Maybe a time lapse of some work that's happening in the church? Are you getting solar panels fitted? There's all sorts of things you could do. Or it could be very simple. It could just be some background video and some text over the top that talks about the environment or shares some quotes or other things that are relevant to that context. It's just about sharing it in a new and different way. And that's it, really. I could go on and on for ages, but I really want to try and keep this concise. If you want more help and advice, follow me on Instagram at Elliot Crippen, and I've got various tips and tricks there for churches on social media. And I post examples of me doing some of this stuff so you can see what some of it might look like in practice. I hope this has been helpful, a whistle-stop tour of social media from my perspective, how we might engage with it as Methodists, doing it slightly differently maybe. It's not a top-down approach, it's us as individuals sharing things we are passionate about as a movement of local people, and that's what we need. We need buy-in from individuals, not church organizations. So with that thought, I'll leave you to it. Thank you. And you can find more resources on the district website, www.yorkshirenemethodist.org/digital-resources. And there's links in the various places if you want to go there and find out more. Or just get in touch with me, message me, and I'm happy to help.